Well, it's a very good afternoon to you, or perhaps good morning or good evening to you, wherever you are listening to this presentation for International Coaching Week. My name is Natalie Ashdown from the Open Door Coaching Group, and I'm joined by the fabulous Brigitte Calvert, our Learning and Development Manager, on the line. Poor Bridget's got COVID, so she's actually joined us, but we're going to be very empathetic if she has to go on mute for coughing, etc. So thank you, B, for being here despite your illness. Welcome to everyone. I know you're dialing in from all around the world, even down the road in Melbourne, but as far as California, Japan, Singapore, all around Australia, welcome to you. We have a very special opportunity today, and that is to listen to a coaching demonstration. And it's a coaching demonstration that Brigitte has actually offered us, and her client has offered us to listen to today. So what we're going to do is spend the first half an hour of the session today listening to the recording. So if you've already listened to the recording, great. We'll be able to listen to it again. I've listened to it 2 or 3 times now, 3 times, I think. And if you haven't listened to it, you get to listen to it, which is wonderful. And then we'll actually debrief the recording based on the ICF core competencies. So before I begin, let me acknowledge the traditional owners, the custodians on the lands on which we meet today, and their continuing connection to the land, the waters and communities of Australia, and the lands from all around the world where you're joining us from today. Hi, Ram is joining us from India. Wherever you might be joining us, we pay our respects to them and to their elders past, present and emerging, and elders from Indigenous communities from all around the world. So in order to actually get the most value out of this coaching demonstration today, or if you're streaming this on your favorite podcasting service, that's wonderful as well if you're listening to this later. To get the most value, we actually have put the transcript of the coaching recording on our website, on where you registered for this session. And I also really strongly recommend that you have the ICF core competencies with you as well. So pop onto coachfederation.org and type in ICF core competencies and download the latest version, the 2019 version of the core competencies, because that's what we'll be thinking about today. We're going to listen to the recording now, and what I really offer you is to think about how does the coach evoke the ICF core competencies. And for me, whenever I listen to the recordings, sometimes it's my gut instinct to go, oh, would I have asked that question, or what would I have done? For me, this recording is not about what I would have done, because don't forget, the coach and the coachee are in the moment. And what we might have done, or what even Brigitte thinks she might have done, listening to it back later, is completely different. So I really offer you to listen for what was the coach actually demonstrating. The reason why I was so keen for this coaching demonstration to be offered to you today as a learning experience is because when I listened to it the first time, I was blown away myself. I learned from listening to this coaching demonstration, and I took my learnings from this coaching demonstration into the next coaching sessions that I've had since. It reminded me, and it sharpened up some things that I may not have been doing in my coaching. So I want you to listen out for those things today, how we can be better coaches because we're listening to this learning opportunity. I really encourage you actually to listen for a few things. Listen to how the coach demonstrates genuine curiosity to explore the unknown. Competency number 8, where the coach cultivates learning and growth with the client. I offer you to have a listen to how the coach partners with the client to explore the goal and explore what's happening for them, and how the coach maintains presence around that. And for those of you that have tapped into our coaching cafes over the last couple of weeks, we spent quite a bit of time talking about the coaching mindset: open, curious, flexible, and client-centered. And we also spent quite a bit of time about how the coach establishes the coaching agreement, and how there's some very important checkbacks that the coach needs to do when you're coaching at a high level around establishing the coaching agreement. So with those things in mind, I just want to open up some things that you might be thinking about. How is awareness evoked? write down some of those great questions that Brigitte asks. And there's a couple of cracking questions that I just went, wow. And you will hear that the client responded in the same way. All right, with that in mind, I'm going to hit the demonstration for us to listen to. I hope you can sit back, take the learnings, and then after that, we will debrief and we'll turn our videos off so that you can immerse yourself in the demonstration as well.
Good morning, Dominique.
Hey, Brigitte, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good, not bad, thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you, same.
So thank you for joining me today. I'm looking forward to our conversation together. We have around 30 minutes today, and I'm wondering what you'd like to talk about in this conversation.
So I think something that's come up for me probably recently, but has come up before, is my thoughts around moving into different roles and moving into more senior roles. So recently something came up where the person that I work with was seeking my interest in stepping into a different role. And that's come up before, and, you know, a couple of years ago, and it's come up again. And my knee-jerk reaction is always, no, that's ridiculous. I don't think so. And it, you know, when it came up in the last week, I was curious as to my default responses in that space and what's really coming up for me.
Okay. So what is most challenging for you around that?
I think for me, the real challenge is I'm creating a whole heap of reasons as to the no and to the negative aspect of the thought to move into a more senior role. And I'll come up with a really long list of why to verify the no. And, you know, they're all real things in my mind. And just recently I thought, but what if, you know, it wasn't that? And then I still come back to the same long list. So I think the real challenge for me is me and how I feel about it. Because if I'm being asked or being, you know, considered, or someone's having a conversation with me about something, there must be something in there for them to get curious with me about it, but I can't see that.
So it sounds like there are people around you that have confidence in you to step up, and at the same time your default reaction is to negate that. And so I'm curious to know, what sorts of uncomfortable feelings or thoughts come up for you when you think about going for that role?
There's always a fear of failure. That is one of them, but I think what's coming up, and it may still be the fear of failure, it'll be working, you know, this position will be working in a large team of peers, and some of my thoughts is, oh my goodness, they'll just be thinking, what on earth is she doing here? How did she get this gig? We've been in the industry for X amount of years, you know. So I spend a lot of time thinking about that, thinking, will I be accepted? Will I be judged? So that is a real thing for me, and spending a bit of time worrying about what everyone else is thinking about the validity of me being in that position. And yeah, so I'd say that's, and a little bit for me is the energy and the commitment to do it. So I work with these people, and I've seen how they all do it differently, and some are, it's all in 24 hours a day, you know, and others can do it sort of that 9 to 5 approach. And that worries me a little bit, is what am I going to be foregoing by stepping into this if I was to? And if I, no assumption to be to be successful, but they're all the things that are going through my mind, is probably how would I be accepted, and could I commit to what it's going to be in terms of the work, the hours, the travel.
So it sounds like your internal dialogue is getting in the way on one hand. And on top of that, there potentially could be a values misalignment too, with working hours and what have you. How does that sit with you?
It sits very well. And it's reminding me of when I was in a different industry, a different role altogether. And I was speaking to my boss at the time, and she was having a conversation with me saying, what's the future look like for you? What are the next steps? And I remember then saying, I had a very young family then, saying, oh no, I'm good where I am because I can't commit to the hours and the travel. And she said to me, but your situation's not going to be the same in 10 years' time. And I feel like I'm still stuck in that mindset a little bit of, I don't know if I can commit. It just, I see some people, it's all consuming, and that's not what I want. I don't want this all consuming. But then again, as I talk about it, there's nothing to stop me doing it my way. And yeah.
So what's most important about this issue for you to raise this today? What's really important about this issue?
I think it might be the acceptance and lack of judgment amongst a group of people I might be moving into, sort of looking how they might see me as the best person for the job, and how I'll navigate that. If there are, I think there's eight others, how I navigate that if I'm not accepted into that group. Because I know them all quite well, and the work that they've done to get there. So that is probably something that's getting in my way the most. Is I'd rather not even step my toe into it and do that somewhere else where nobody knows me.
Sure. Okay. So, and so then what's the hardest thing about stepping into that and experiencing that, if that's what you think is going to happen? What's the hardest thing about that?
I think a lack of community, or a lack of a team. That feeling of not being supported and being with like-minded people who are all in it together to support each other to be the best that they can be. So that's a team that I work in and around at the moment. So it's probably not being very open to working with some of those people who I know have extremely different values to me and how they treat people. So yeah, that would bother me. That would be difficult for me to work with.
So at the start of this conversation, you talked about there potentially being a role that other people suggested that you would be good for, and internal dialogue was perhaps telling you something else. And on top of that, you've also highlighted some of the people in the environment that may have you feel not confident in that particular role. So thinking about this conversation today, what would you like to get out of this conversation?
I think for me, it's more putting to rest the inner dialogue and the constant battle of what if, what could, maybe, you know, around that being accepted, and getting myself to a position where I accept the unknown and back myself with a little bit more confidence around, or you know, assurance that I can bring very different things that maybe others can't. So I think it's just getting that chatter out and working with what I actually know, what I can control.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what will be different for you then, Dominique, if you are able to get rid of that internal dialogue, that internal chatter, and feel that confidence that you're wanting to experience?
I think just a sense of peace almost. I kind of know my position. I know it's a yes or a no. I'm not constantly tied up in knots as should I, would I, could I, shall I do it? You know, it's easier for me to do the yes or the no for these reasons rather than the back and forth, which I think I've been doing for years, because I haven't spent enough time in that space to really think about it. It's just always been no for 25 different reasons.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So I think, so you're clear around the challenge itself and what supports that challenge in terms of your own internal dialogue. What would it look like for you if you were to create a picture around being who you wanted to be? What would that look like?
In a future state? Role-wise? You think?
Sure. I'm thinking about some of the words that you've used, that internal chatter and the things that you're telling yourself currently that prevents you from perhaps taking on these roles. What would be different if you did have the confidence and the chatter is gone? So what you're wanting to get rid of?
Okay. I think a sense of calm and confidence around the places that I want to work in, or where, and also knowing the impact and the value that I do have and what I can bring, as opposed to I wonder if I could do that and what would that look like, and maybe I can't. So I think it's a sense of being sure around the value that I can bring so that I'm making a really informed, easy decision for myself around what that looks like for me in the future, and probably picking the places that I want to go as well. And putting myself forward for those positions as opposed to keeping my head low.
I'm curious around calm and confidence, the impact you have aligned to, working in alignment with what you value, and being sure about yourself around your value. I'm wondering, how have you experienced that in the past?
It's been really interesting because in the past I've worked in different environments, and I've often found it's the people rather than what the nature of the business is that I'm aligned to. So often the nature of the business is secondary or to the work that I've done. And it's really the teams that I've worked in that have been really important to me. I'm currently in an industry that I'm very aligned to, and the people as well. So what we do and also the people. So this is probably the first time in a really long time outside of the beginning of my career where both have aligned beautifully for me. because I have a skill where I could probably slot into any industry, really. So where it's worked really well for me is probably the situation I'm in, but it's very insular. And the different role opens it wide open to lots of other parts of the organisation or other states as well. So it goes from a local to a national. And that's the bit, it becomes a little bit tenuous for me because it's wide open. So what works well for me now is know the team, I know the values that we work by. I'm instrumental in creating a lot of that because of the role that I hold. And I guide a lot of that work as well. And it works very well. This other position is stepping away from that in a way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if you could measure currently how you're feeling around experiencing calm and confidence and having an impact and experiencing being aligned to your values, being sure at the moment, on a scale from 1 to 10, how are you currently experiencing all of that?
I would say easily 8, 9 or 10, depending on the day. Currently, I preempting and creating a story so it's not real, but I would see that dropping quite significantly to a 4, a 3 or a 4, because I wouldn't know how to do that as well as I do it here. So that might be the thing. And there's nothing to say I can't build up, right, to that back again. But that's where I'm a little bit nervous. Yeah.
So that fear of the unknown.
Yeah, and sometimes for me it's what I do know, because unfortunately I do know the team, or fortunately, and this is where I sometimes think I'll probably be better off just doing it in a different organisation where better the devil, no, that doesn't work. Better you don't know, and ignorance is bliss, right? So there's some people that I know are on a particular journey and that's for them to go through, but they'll unlikely to be changing who they are, and it's working side by side with some of these colleagues. So it's sort of not sure how I feel about that.
It sounds like that it's not just the fear of the unknown in terms of yourself, but what you do know about the environment in that particular.
Yes.
Then curious, given that you're currently experiencing an 8, 9 or 10 even, and yet this particular role has been thrown your way for, consideration, and yet you do have some insight around some important factors. So I'm wondering, what rules have you set for yourself that allow this to be a challenge at all?
This is a good question. I think, this goes to the heart of it for me. I think that I've got to where I've got to by working with good people, and not always, but certainly recently and at the start and then the middle, just some weird experiences, but nothing too traumatic. But I think the rule that I have is that's not for me. Those positions are not for me. I need to stay relatively, I don't know if low is the word, but almost not invisible, but just to stay below the radar. It's not something I'm very comfortable to do, to sit into a different position where there's a lot of focus. So I think the rule is stay slightly below the radar, do really good work, but don't kind of stick your head up and move into more senior or more visible roles, because then, you know, when you fall over you fall from height. So I think that's probably one rule that I'm living by, that I'm not aware that I'm living by so much.
And how do you feel about that rule now that you've expressed it?
It's been quite limiting. And I've always looked at my career as slow and steady. And I think it's been slow and steady because I've always been quite trepidatious around my progress, you know, being quite cautious, low risk adverse, stepping into roles that I know that I can do really well, which is kind of staying slightly below the radar, but then growing really well in the positions, because I, you know, have that mindset of just whatever it is, just work really hard. So this one that's come back a few times, it's almost like a ridiculous conversation to me. I'm just like, well, that's ridiculous. Why would you speak to me about that? Because it's taken me out of that comfort zone, I think, where I feel quite safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Safety and comfort.
Yeah. Yeah. Safety is hugely, hugely important for me. And I've never been one to play the political game either. I just shy away from that, and I have no time for that. I don't think about how I could make a difference if I'm in a different role to influence that as well, to silence kind of those games, if you like, that are played. So I just stay away from it. Yeah.
So I think you know, you've expressed, I guess, what those internal advisors, I guess, you know, saying to you internally, and I'm wondering if you were to go to someone that you really respected, you knew you well, what advice would they give you?
They would probably, I'm thinking of the person who's come to me, actually, who knows me well, would probably, you know, have a smile on their face to go, you know, we're having this conversation, and it's the capability just to do it is, you know, it's almost stepping in, making the first step is the hardest thing. And they would probably say, do it. You've got good people around you in this space who are going to support you and help you to be successful. They equally wouldn't push me either. So they wouldn't say just, you know, so I think they would definitely just encourage me to just give it a go in an environment that's relatively secure for me, whilst I learn the bits and pieces and then take it from there.
So I'm wondering, Dominique, reflecting back on our conversation so far, what are you learning?
That I get in my way a lot. And continue to do so. Yeah. And I think that's why I brought this today, because I know that I'm getting in my way, and learnt about the rules that I've kind of living by as well. That rule around safety, keep low, work hard, but don't go too far, because the risk is bigger there.
So it does sound like it is an important challenge for you right now, and important focus something that you want to focus on, how will you know when you've been able to overcome this internal chatter and this feeling of wanting to play it safe?
I think for me, it's confidently getting curious about the opportunity and spending time, or this or other, you know, so it could be this or future, and getting really curious about how my experience and my values and my characteristics can make a difference. So rather than looking at an opportunity to go, well, I can't do this and I haven't done that, and this seems really overwhelming to me, it's turning it around into the possibility of how do I make this work? How does this fit in with what I have to offer? How will it meet my needs? So turning it around to completely to how I'm looking at it at the moment. Moving from why me to if it is me, then what? Yeah.
So that ability to be confident and curious and look at the possibility and see how it might work for you. Now understanding that idea to move forward, if you were able to do that on a scale from 1 to 10, if you how comfortable you are with that idea, where would you be?
I'd be 7 or 8, I reckon. Yeah. Because even saying it feels more powerful, you know, and powerful in the sense of I'm in the driving seat rather than the panic and trying to backpedal as quickly as possible, which is the emotion that I've felt recently was, oh my goodness, how do I get out of this conversation? To putting myself in a driving seat to go, right, this is really interesting. Let's have that conversation. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're already telling yourself something different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so moving forward then, how will you now approach this conversation or this opportunity?
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking as we're talking that I'm going to go back to this person and have a different conversation. And it's not about, right, I want to be, I'm in it. It's more, let's have that conversation around what it is about this role that what can I bring to this role? And I think it's just more of a fruitful, explorative, you know, exploration around the ins and outs rather than I can't do this and that's something new to me. So that, and I think that's a very different type of conversation. Well, it is completely different to the one I had last week, which was just a straight no.
Sure. Okay. And
yeah.
Now that you're challenging the no and recognizing that there could be potential opportunity, I'm wondering, what do you bring, given your experience that you have? What do you bring to a role such as that?
Yeah. For me, it's about knowing people really well and knowing what motivates and engages people and teams, and adding a commercial lens to that. So ultimately there's always a business to run underneath that. But without really, really good, well-intentioned humans doing the work, there's no business. And a comfort level to have the hard conversation and to ask the awkward questions as well, and whether that's one-on-one or an open forum. So it's I think, and that's over years of, you know, different experience, very focused and driven and organized, and all of those sort of good business acumen things that sit in the background, but also really good at surrounding myself with people who are very good at what they do to combat the things that I'm not good at as well. So working to everyone's strengths. So yeah, I often talk in the different roles that I've had is you can teach most people most things, but learning how to work with humans sometimes is the hardest part. And sometimes you either have it or you don't, to know what makes people tick. And I know what makes people tick. So for me, I think that's the starting point for most things.
Lovely. It sounds to me like the obstacle that you raised around yourself getting in your own way, essentially the resource and the support is you and what you bring to people. At the start of this conversation, you were concerned about potentially the environment or some of the people. And it sounds like you do have the skill set and you do have the strength to be able to work in a way that's going to make it a full experience, maybe. What do you think?
It makes me nervous. Yeah, no, it's exciting and nerve-wracking, because it's that question you asked around, so what are your values? That was quite an imposing question for me. I was just like, oh gosh, this is difficult, because most people just know it because you're in the space and they just know what you do. So talking, sort of articulating it is a good thing for me to do, and to sit comfortably in that place to go, this is what I do bring, you know, through my years of experience, and owning it, because that's what I tell other people. I said, you just got to own your space. So that was quite a good process for me, just to answer that question. Yeah.
And you mentioned the words excited and nervous, and I'm wondering if the nerves were there to support you and to be your friend, what would the nerves be telling you?
The nerves would be saying this is a good feeling because it's unknown and it's new. So it's a challenge and you're learning new things, and it's going to be okay. You know, we just pick up and carry on, basically. I think that's what would be happening there.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
What are the next steps for you then, Dominique?
I'm going to go back and have this conversation with this person, and just explore it with them quite differently to what I did earlier.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And I think thinking about the week, we've got a meeting on Monday. I'll probably do that on Monday. So Monday coming.
What other resources or support do you need?
I think I want to write some thoughts down for myself after the session today, and make some notes around the conversation that we've had, and do some reflection, and then dive into the conversation. I don't think I need to speak to anyone else at this point.
Right. And thinking about our conversation today, where we started and where we are right now, I'm wondering, what stands out for you as being a key learning?
Some of the questions were really pivotal for me around thinking about the role that I'm playing in my own decisions and in my own life versus the stories I'm creating about the unknown and what I think could happen. And again, I always say control the controllable. So how I think and feel about that is in my hands and in my control. But I've been, I think, comfortably letting that go because it's more comfortable. So I've probably learned there's a balance for me of feeling comfortable versus the stories I'm creating to keep me away from what you know, whatever might be next. So, whatever that looks like.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done. Dominic, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about now that's going to make this conversation more complete for you?
I think I'm done. All good. Yeah, really good. Thank you.
Thanks, Dominic, and thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for the conversation.
No, thank you. That was awesome. Thanks so much, Bridget.
Well, welcome back, everybody. Let's just take a moment, if you don't mind, to firstly acknowledge you, Brigitte, for that coaching conversation and for allowing us, and to acknowledge Dominique as well for allowing us to listen to that conversation. I've listened to this conversation, I think this is my 4th time, and I'm writing down even more lessons and learnings from it. So thank you so much. We're very grateful. Oh, sorry, there's music starting here. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks, Nat. And thank you to everyone online for sharing what you've just shared as well. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not sure if you can hear that music. I don't know where it's coming from. Wait me 1 second as I try to. We'll just listen to it and enjoy it for a second.
About the way that you walk into my living room casually.
Okay, a little bit of Imagines Dragons in the celebration music. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and we'll share the transcript link again as well. I did realize that when I put myself on mute, that's what stopped the recording. So apologies, apologies to you again. Okay, so we want to now spend some time taking this opportunity to debrief the recording. And as an opportunity for you, I'm very keen if anyone would like to jump in and put a message into the chat about what were your initial reactions, what stood out for you about the recording and the demonstration. And then I will actually, and with Brigitte, share some of the things that I actually heard. And for those of you, I really do encourage you to download the transcript. My transcript is completely marked up. It's highlighted. It's got references all over it. It's tabbed and everything against the ICF core competencies. So I really acknowledge you and encourage you to do that. So I'm keen if anyone wants to jump in to the chat, share with us whatever stood out for you in terms of the ICF core competencies or just what you experienced. Let's go from there. Get your experiences first. And thank you for all the emojis that are coming through as well. That was very good of you. So amazing perspective reflections from Brigitte. Yeah, absolutely, Brett. Thank you for jumping in. Articulate questions, real curiosity, layered on more curiosity. Yes, absolutely. And I think what stuck out for me was the cleanness of the coaching session. So you notice that the coach wasn't inserting themselves into the conversation. And this is a really important part of our coaching as well. If you listen to some of my coaching, you'll hear me with a bit more wonderful, great, that's excellent, you know, a bit more insertion. So one of the key learnings for me out of this was not inserting yourself into the conversation. You can just ask those beautiful, clear questions. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Maribel says, I'm particularly impressed with the circling back on facilitating the client growth and evoking awareness. Yes, thank you, Maribel. If you look at competency number 8 and you look at, I beg your pardon, competency number 7 and competency number 8, that facilitating growth and awareness, it really is there, the questions that evoked awareness. And what we're looking here at a very high level of coaching from high PCC into MCC is we're evoking awareness that wasn't there before. And there was some cracking questions that Brigitte asked, as you heard. There's a couple, I've heard that question a couple of times now, the what rules question. And that is going onto my tool belt. And I just cannot wait for the opportunity to ask that question because it just made such a massive difference. The coachee just stood back and went, wow, great questions. So we want to listen for those really great questions. What rules have you set for yourself that allow this to be a challenge at all? It's just music to our ears. And then the follow-up question, as you mentioned, Maribel, was, and how do you feel about that rule now that you've expressed it? So not just leaving the rule, but expanding the awareness. Once that awareness is there, let's expand it even further. Yes, thank you. Impressed with the circling back. Yeah, what a great example of a values-based session where Brigitte did a great job at helping the coachee to knock out the legs that were holding the beliefs and driving her actions. Yes, Simone, you heard that and I heard it too. Now, the difference, if I might point out, between, say, a rookie coach and what Brigitte did. So you can hear, I can hear where, say, a more beginner coach, for example, would have gone for the straight reframe. Early in the piece, you could have gone for establish the goal. What do you want to be saying for yourself? Which would have been lovely coaching. It would have been excellent coaching, but it would not have done exactly what you said, Simone, knocked out the legs underneath that limiting belief. So for those of you that have done the certificate for, you can almost hear the tabletop, can't you? You can hear the legs supporting that tabletop, and how skillfully and craftfully, almost if you saw that picture of the legs underneath, how Brigitte allowed the client to knock out the legs for herself. That's the most important thing here, is the reframe was actually done by the client knocking those legs out, as opposed to the coach overtly knocking those legs out or overtly doing the reframe. And it was in the beautiful questions that Brigitte said, and the observations. She said, so it sounds like you're already telling yourself something different. Allowing the client to go, well, actually, yeah, I am. And then expanding on that. So beautiful observation. Thank you. Great use of, go on, Bridge, jump in.
Just going to say that is the first time I've listened to the recording. So
Yeah.
it's, listening back to that conversation and really feeling like, and I talk about this often in our Cert 4 and diploma programs, it's just facilitating somebody else's thinking. So it's taking that step back and throwing the who, what, where, when, how, those questions to facilitate that person's thinking, as you say, Nat, rather than, inserting myself into that conversation. So that's what stood out for me listening back to that, is that sort of not the fly on the wall or the bird on your shoulder or whatever it is, but it's from the outside perspective, just facilitating thinking.
Yes, and I think the coaching presence, I agree with you. The coaching presence is there because you are there, and the partnering, you're there with the client partnering. It was as though we could see that, just sitting there listening, and the evoking the awareness, and then, as has been pointed out, the expanding of the growth. Now, if a coach is inserting themselves into that, trying to drive for the next actions, get the goal clear, etc., that's still good coaching. It's a different level of coaching that you were doing, that you shared with us. Absolutely. Yeah. And as George has pointed out, the deeper discovery questions as well. So they're questions that, we might have on our tool belt, but how you use them to grow that awareness in that presence. I felt, Bridge, you were using a lot of your intuition as well. I felt that there was gut feelings you had that evoked a question. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. I think, I really focused on listening to what Dominique was saying in the moment and wanting to respond in that moment, thinking for a moment about what is the best question I can formulate around what she's just said that's going to support her to move forward or to stretch her thinking, rather than leaving her circling, even though I wanted to get to the heart of the matter to start with. So a lot of those questions earlier on around what's actually the challenge and what's standing in the way, and those sorts of things to start with, to get to that obstacle rather than the surface level problem that emerged immediately.
Yes, and again, for everyone that's listening, pointing out that that's the difference between the levels now, ACC, PCC, and MCC. So at ACC, we take what the client has presented and we roll with that, which is great coaching. It is great coaching. What the PCC and the MCC does is takes what the client's offering, and then, as someone has pointed out, takes that deeper. Why is that a challenge for you? How is it impacting? How will you know when it's not there? What difference would that make? So all of those questions were allowing the further expansion of the client's awareness. And with that, then you moved into, well, what is it going to look like if it wasn't that? Re-clarifying what the client was learning each time, those kind of things really stood out as well. Yeah. Someone's pointed out the scaling questions. So you can hear those classic scaling questions. I think the timing of the scaling question was the perfect thing. And then rechecking, well, if you were to have this, where would you be on that scale? So that was really nicely done as well.
Yes, I do love a scaling question.
Love a scaling question, I know, exactly. And then it used to be in the old set of core competencies, we used to be almost encouraged and forced to set the metaphor about what it's going to look like. But I think what George is pointing out here, it is about creating a picture for what you wanted to be and where you wanted to be. And what might that look like? So now we're moving into that competency around facilitating the future, what the future growth might look like. And there's a very important competency I want you to potentially offer you to go back and take a look at it. It's 8.1, and often people say, how do I do this? It's about integrating the learning into their new view of their world and their new behaviours. And this was the question that George has so rightly pointed out that started to help the client think about, what does the new view of the world look like? And then you could hear those questions as they came along after that, that then reinforced what the new view of the world would be, what the new behaviours would be. But the clients bringing all that to the surface because of the great questions that Brigitte actually asked. Yeah. So effective in a short period of time. Elizabeth, thank you for pointing that out. 34 minutes, that was all that conversation was. So those people that think they need a lot more time, it's just such a brilliant example of what you can achieve in that period of time. Great partnering. Yes, I agree with you. Sharon's pointed out Brigitte did a great job at staying out of the space and encouraged the client to be responsible for their own choices. She didn't try to solve the problem, but tried to encourage them to reflect. Now, that's a very, very important insight. Thank you, Sharon, for doing that. At ACC level, we take what the client's given us, we move forward with actions and to solve that problem. I don't mind admitting to you that when I first heard the opening of the conversation, that is potentially what I might have done. And that was the reminder to me, a smack in the face almost, to go, stop, explore, be curious. And so that's where I went, we all need to listen to this. So if you know, I've been coaching for a long time, and if I remind myself to stop, explore, then I'm sure we can all do that as well. So yeah. Go on, Brigitte, were you going to offer something else there as well?
No, I was just listening to you. Absolutely. I agree with you. It can be easy to quickly jump into that solution mode and get to, well, what is it that you want instead? You know, which is a valuable question, and it can be in moments where you have 5 minutes or what have you. But essentially, to really get to the heart of the matter, or the core of the issue, I think really supports then that quick turnaround that, you know, we talk about that 30 odd minutes. That's partly, well, it is because of that. It's because you drill down into that, what's really going on here, and the insight that a client gets from being able to have that moment to explore then allows for a quicker turnaround in terms of being able to find a way forward for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And the client themselves said, this has got to the heart of the minute, to the heart. This has gone to the heart of it. Now, when you look at it, I did highlight it on the transcript, the heart of the matter, getting to the heart of the matter. It happened early in the conversation. I'm just trying to pick up the actual, I've got so many highlights on the document, but go back and have a listen, everybody, because when the client actually said, oh, that's got to the heart of the matter, happened early in the conversation. It was around the rules. Yeah, so at 18 minutes into the conversation, Bridget was in, we were already getting to the heart of the matter, and then the client actually said those words. So it is that taking the opportunity at the beginning to set up the conversation and what is going on here? Why are we even talking about this? Which is almost the question you asked that allowed it to get in deeper. As I said, great coaching would have been to actually take what was on the surface, roll with it, do the reframe, put the actions in place, etc. But it was the awareness and evoking the awareness. This is a session where we're trying to facilitate the growth and exploration, getting the client the opportunity to do that. Is exactly what you said, Bridge. Yeah. What else we have here? We'll just keep going for a little bit longer because there's so many valuable opportunities. If you do need to leave, that's perfectly fine. You can pick up the end of the recording as well, end of this session. So Bridget did a great job at staying out of the space. Yes, encouraging them to be responsible for their own choices. She didn't try to solve the problem, but encourage them to reflect. And that's where the learning questions, I think, came out, and they were very powerful. Did you hear, everybody, how the client started to move into what actions she could take? And then Bridget so skillfully said, well, what are the next steps for you? What other resources do you need? So we're wrapping up this conversation now. Is there anything more you need to be, what were the key learnings? So wrapping up that conversation to move forward, which is competency number 8 as well. It was great pairing. Yes, the client was self-aware. The client demonstrated vulnerability to be able to share this with us, knowing that we would be listening to the recording. So a wonderful acknowledgement of what Dominique has offered to us as well. And what was very nice about what Bridget think she did as well, at the end of it, she thanked the client for the vulnerability. And the coach is vulnerable in not knowing where this is going to go, just being open to evoke the awareness and going into the unknown with the client, which is really skillful coaching. And then at the end, acknowledging that actually occurred from the vulnerability point of view is really beautiful high-level coaching as well. So thank you for pointing out that point as well. And the grace and the edge, the rapport. It brought out the strengths of the client as well. So I just highlighted it, that question. It was so beautiful. Now that you're challenging the no and recognizing that there could be potential opportunities. So now that this is happening, I'm not saying it is, but just the potential. I'm wondering what do you bring, given your experience? What do you have that you bring to the role? And look at all those amazing strengths that came out. Oh, I put stars all over that in my transcript. Yeah. Divergent thinking, exploring the what, when, and the how, back to pulling it into being future focused. So how do we build that into the client's future view of the world? Yeah, absolutely. And yes, the transcript is available. So the transcript is available on our website where you actually registered on the opendoorcoaching.com.au, the Coaching Cafe page. The transcript is there. We've also edited it a little bit just because of when the transcript happened, there's a couple of errors in it, but we've edited it. So please feel free to download the transcript and download the ICF core competencies. And I would listen to it again and listen for those ICF core competencies that you are hearing as well. And when we get around to it, we'll be able to put our notes, our marked up notes, and that'll be able to help you with your reflections as well. Yes, and the CCC will be available as well. Bridget, other reflections on the coaching now that you've heard it back for the second time, and I like the fact that we can talk about this more as from your ICF, you're a PCC assessor. If you forget that it was you that was coaching, you can take that PCC assessor hat, and that's what I do from an MCC and a coach training point of view. So other insights that you wanted to add?
Well, I think, Nat, what really stood out for me listening is simply talk about this all the time, the open questions rather than the closed questions. So I'm aware of asking those open questions to elicit that more, I guess, stretching the coachee's thinking around that. And what else can I say about it? I think, wanting to spend time on establishing that agreement around, what's at the core of this, and I guess then the whole visual around, how would you like it to be instead? If the nerves were your friend, that in a sense was a reframing. When she said it was nerves, like using that, the nerves, and being able to say, well, what if those nerves were supporting you, and that whilst you're experiencing it and feeling it, they were actually serving you and supporting you rather than taking something away. So wanting to make that work as well. Resources, support. Yeah, I think that's probably all I can add, having listened to that, as I say, for the first time, and just wanting to really, be not the safe fly on the wall, but staying out of that space and just facilitating that thinking is really what stands out for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I could really hear that. This was about, I'm going to open up that space for you, coachee, to explore this, for you to evoke the awareness that you have the ability to do. And that really stood out for me, certainly as well. And I think absolutely what a great demonstration of open questions. If we go back through the transcript, which I have several times, they are all open questions, and they're not leading questions. You're not leading the client down a garden path and saying, okay, well, let's talk about this, this, and this. So we're hearing the difference between what we might do when we start out coaching and then where this coaching is at as well. I know some of you have to go. That is absolutely fine. But as we're just finishing up, I just want to point out a few other core competencies for what you might be thinking about. So we talked about establishing the agreement, and as part of establishing the agreement, I reminded you over the last couple of coaching cafes that we want to check back in, and we want to make sure that what we're talking about is what the client wants to pursue. And Brigitte did that a couple of times, actually. And what they need to address and resolve. So that creates the awareness under 3.7, 3.7 evoking awareness. Go to competency 2.5, using your intuition to explore and unpack. Go to competency 7.5, evoking awareness. 3.6, where Brigitte, when the establishing the agreement, identifies and reconfirms what we're talking about here and actually what needs to be addressed. And the way she did that is she asked the question, well, what would be different for you? So again, thinking about how we're thinking into the future, we had measures of success, we had restating the goal. I could just go on, and we will put some markups here as well. I think if you want to go somewhere and listen again, go to competency number 7, evoking awareness, 7.8, factors that influence the current and the future state. Go to 7.5, sharing more and opening up that awareness. And then go to 8.2. I'm talking about the ICEP core competencies 8.2, where Brigitte starts to lock in the growth and assist the client to move forward by locking in what they've learned, what their strengths are, removing the barriers at the end of the conversation, and then setting the goals and actions. And at the end, honoring 3.11, honoring the client experience. So I don't know, I feel almost emotional. Bridge, I want to honour you for offering us this conversation to learn from. I want to honour Dominique for her value, for her vulnerability in allowing us to share. And I do want to honour you all for listening to this recording, for taking time out during International Coach Week. And I hope that, like me, by listening to this coaching demonstration, we're not only honouring our own practice, but we're honouring ourselves and our growth and development. So I want to thank you again. All the thanks are coming through, Bridge. And as I said, you know, demonstrating, as Annie has pointed out, such a high level of coaching that we can all learn from.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the feedback too. Thank you so much.
The ICF CCEU has been up there, so feel free to take a copy of it. And happy International Coach Week, everybody.